The only thing I ever wanted to be was a firefighter.
This is my son, Blake O'Hara. I've had the pleasure of being able to work with Blake here for the last year.
Blake, what got you interested in firefighting?
Well, my father. I mean, that's pretty, that's kind of standard, especially in this career. I never grew up like, oh, my dad has to work, or my dad's never around, or anything like that. It was like, my dad has to work today, and maybe I get to go visit him. It wasn't anything. I never had any moment where I ever thought, my dad's never around. He was always around the house enough, and if he wasn't around the house, we got to go to the firehouse and visit him. That's why things like Christmases were never, when he wasn't there, we still got to hang out in the morning, open presents in the morning, then we got to go to the firehouse later on and see the other part of our family, and hang out with the other kids who were raised around it just the same. Just something I saw him doing, I want to do as well. If I wanted to, I used to always say I either want to be a firefighter or a PG&E man, but that was just because I got to go up in the buckets, and so I figured be a firefighter, you get to do both. So, so it was never, he never persuaded me away from doing something else into the fire service. So he was always, supportive of whatever I wanted to do. Just luckily, this is what it was.
And Chief O'Hara, you're okay with his decision?
Absolutely. As a firefighter in this job, you always hope that your child will want to follow in your footsteps. And I was very happy of the fact that Blake decided to make that his career. I'm the first generation firefighter. Fire departments and firefighting is a generational thing that a lot of times gets passed down from generation to generation in the fire service. In my family, I'm the first to have started that part of the career, and I'm glad that somebody wants to do that and kind of follow in my footsteps.
It was a convenience that I had. Definitely not a leg up though. Still had to go through all the same classes.
Exactly.
Still had to try just as hard to get the job. I tested here multiple times before I was able to get this position. So it was nice to be able to go home and have a resource. I didn't have to call up a station or call up someone who I barely knew and ask them a question. I could just go home and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or I'm thinking about testing here, or just random questions about general how to act around the firehouse, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. I always had that resource at home, but I never had it easier than anyone else getting into it. I truthfully don't feel I did at all. I thought that I was equal across the board. Still going through training, that's the beauty of the fire service, is until you retire, you're always going to be training. If there's not something new that's coming out, there's an old policy or an old procedure that's getting updated or changed because of technology and up and coming theories and resources that we may have. So being the newest out of this last academy, I'm definitely still going through a lot of training. Being on probation, I have certain task books that I have to sign off. I have 2 binders about that thick of sign-offs and procedures and policies that I have to constantly be studying and writing off. After this interview, I have a whole book I got to read through, a couple chapters, and get that signed off, talk about it with my captain.
Dan, what's going through your mind when you see your son at that starting point where you were at so many years ago?
He is, in the beginning of his career, he's leaps and bounds beyond where I think that I am today. Through his experiences, through his college education, through his paramedic education, it's much further, and that's where the fire service has gone. The fire service itself was not looked upon as a technical type of job, and it truly is today. It's a profession in which we're trained in hazardous materials, we're trained in paramedicine, we're trained in rescue, cliff rescue, water rescue, wildland structural. It's what we call all-risk operation, and it is truly an all-risk operation.
Blake, do you see yourself someday being a battalion chief?
The only reason I would say yeah is because my father has. That's really the only reason, maybe, because I've been able to see it from his standpoint, from the home standpoint, and also from what he does on the job. There's definitely benefits to it, but as of right now, probably no. And he used to say he'd never be a battalion chief either. So.